The sun was setting over New Haven, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Deho ran through the tall grass near the edge of the settlement, laughing as he chased after Yuna. The little girl's black hair bounced as she ran, her smile bright and carefree. "You can't catch me," Yuna called out, giggling. "Yes, I can," Deho shouted back. He was 8 years old and faster than 7-year-old Yuna, but he always let her stay ahead just a little bit. That's what friends did. Mina sat on a large rock nearby, watching the 2 younger children play. At 10 years old, she was the oldest and felt responsible for them. Her parents had asked her to keep an eye on Deho and Yuna while they finished work in the fields. She didn't mind. New Haven was safe and the children played here every day. Little Jiho sat next to Mina, building a small tower from pebbles. He was only 6 and preferred quiet activities to running around. His tongue stuck out slightly as he concentrated on balancing another stone on top. "Careful, Jiho," Mina said softly. "That one looks wobbly." The colony of New Haven had been established only 5 years ago. 2,000 humans called it home now. They grew crops, raised animals, and built a peaceful life far from Earth. The planet was beautiful, with clear skies and gentle weather. Everyone knew everyone else. Children played freely and parents worked without worry. That peace ended in the next moment. A shadow fell across the grass. Deho stopped running and looked up. His smile faded. Something large blocked out the setting sun. "What is that?" Yuna asked, her voice small. Mina stood up quickly, her heart suddenly racing. A ship hung in the air above them. It was huge and dark, with a strange design unlike any human vessel she had ever seen. Strange lights pulsed along its surface. "Run!" Mina shouted. "Run back to the settlement!" But it was too late. Panels opened on the bottom of the ship. Creatures dropped down, moving impossibly fast. They looked like insects, but walked on 2 legs. Their bodies were covered in hard shells that gleamed like black metal. Multiple eyes reflected the dying sunlight. They had 4 arms each, and they moved with horrible purpose. Deho grabbed Yuna's hand and tried to run. One of the creatures raised a weapon. A blue light shot out. Deho felt his whole body go stiff. He couldn't move. He fell to the ground, still conscious but frozen. Yuna fell beside him, her eyes wide with terror. Mina tried to run with Jiho, but more creatures surrounded them. Another flash of blue light, and they both collapsed into the grass. The creatures moved quickly and efficiently. They picked up the frozen children like packages. Deho could still see and hear everything, but his body wouldn't respond. He was carried toward the ship, helpless. He could hear Yuna crying softly next to him. Inside the ship, Deho saw other children. Dozens of them, all from the colony. Some were frozen like him. Others were already locked in clear cages, crying and calling for their parents. The creatures moved through the ship without speaking, organizing the children into groups. Deho was placed in a cage with Yuna, Mina, and Jiho. The blue light wore off after a few minutes, and he could move again. He immediately pulled Yuna close. She was shaking. "It's okay," Deho whispered, trying to sound brave even though his own voice trembled. "It's going to be okay." "I want my mom," Yuna sobbed. Mina was already checking the cage, running her hands along the smooth walls. There were no visible locks, no handles, nothing. Jiho sat in the corner, tears running silently down his face. Through the transparent walls of their cage, Deho could see one of the creatures speaking into a device. Its voice sounded like clicking and hissing, but a machine translated it into words the children could understand. "Acquisition successful," the creature said. 63 juvenile specimens of species designation. Human. Recently cataloged species. Limited technological development. No significant military presence in this sector. The specimens will bring excellent prices at the Outer Rim markets. Another creature responded. "Confirmed. Initiate departure. This backwater world has no capacity to pursue or resist." The ship began to move. Deho felt a strange sensation in his stomach as they lifted higher. Through a viewing panel in the cargo hold, he could see New Haven getting smaller below them. He could see the settlement, the farms, and tiny figures of people running around in confusion. Then they rose above the clouds and everything disappeared. In the settlement below, chaos erupted. Parents ran through the streets screaming their children's names. The colonial governor stood in the town square, his face pale as parents surrounded him, demanding answers. "Where are our children?" a woman cried. "Where did they take them?" "We're sending distress signals now," the governor said, his voice shaking. To Earth, to the nearest human outpost, to anyone who can hear us. How long until help arrives? A man asked. The governor couldn't answer. Space was vast. New Haven was on the fringe of explored territory. Even the fastest ships would take days to arrive, maybe weeks. A mother fell to her knees in the grass where her son had been playing. She picked up his toy, a small carved spaceship he had dropped. She held it to her chest and wept. Across the galaxy, the distress signal traveled through space at the speed of light. It carried a simple message that would change everything. This is New Haven Colony. We have been attacked. 63 children have been taken by unknown hostile aliens, requesting immediate assistance. Our children are gone. Please help us. On the alien ship, the creature called Threx congratulated himself. He was the captain of this raiding vessel, and the mission had been perfect. Quick, efficient, and profitable. These humans were a weak species, barely noticed by the galactic community. Their children would sell well to collectors who wanted exotic servants. Threx had been raiding backwater worlds for 20 years. He knew the pattern. Small colonies couldn't fight back. Their governments would protest, maybe demand negotiations, but ultimately do nothing. By the time any official response came, the merchandise would already be sold and scattered across a dozen worlds. Set course for the void markets, Threx ordered his crew. We have a good haul today. In their cage, Mina held the younger children close. She forced herself to stay calm, to be strong for them, but inside she was terrified. She didn't know where they were going. She didn't know if they would ever see their families again. Deho pressed his hand against the transparent wall of the cage. He thought about his parents, about his home, about the life that had been torn away in seconds. Someone will come for us, he said quietly. My dad always said that humans take care of each other. Someone will come. Mina wanted to believe him, but as she looked out at the stars rushing past, she felt very small and very far from home. What none of them knew was that Deho was right. Someone was coming. Many someones. And the creatures who had taken them had just made the worst mistake of their entire civilization's existence. They had taken human children, and humanity would never, ever forgive that. The Galactic Council chamber was enormous. Hundreds of species from across known space had representatives here. The chamber was built like an amphitheater, with seats rising in circles around a central speaking platform. Translator devices floated through the air, converting every language into something everyone could understand. Ambassador Somin stood on the central platform. She was a small woman by human standards, barely over 5 feet tall with silver hair pulled back in a tight bun. She wore a simple black suit. Her face showed no emotion as she waited for the session to begin. Around her, various alien species whispered to each other. Some had multiple heads, others were clouds of gas held together by energy fields. A few looked almost human, while others were completely incomprehensible in form. They all watched the human ambassador with curiosity. Most of them had met Somin before. She was always polite, always diplomatic, always patient. The humans were a young species, barely a century into interstellar travel. They followed the rules, respected boundaries, and caused no trouble. This was the first time Somin had requested an emergency session. Counselor Vrath called the session to order. Vrath was an amphibious being with smooth blue skin and large golden eyes. He had been a mediator for the council for 40 years and had resolved thousands of disputes. Ambassador Somin, Vrath said in his bubbling voice, the council recognizes you. Please state your concern. Somin pressed a button. A holographic display appeared above the platform, showing images of New Haven. The peaceful colony, the settlement, the children playing. Then the images changed, showing the attack, the alien ship, the empty fields where children had been. 3 days ago, Somin said, her voice perfectly controlled, 63 human children were taken from the colony of New Haven by raiders of the Vexil species. The youngest was 6 years old. The oldest was 10. Murmurs ran through the chamber. The Vexil representative, an insectoid creature with a hard black shell, shifted in his seat. The children were taken from their homes. Somin continued. They were stunned with weapons, loaded into a ship-like cargo and removed from human space. We have reason to believe they are being transported to slavery markets in the Outer Rim. Counselor Vrath's large eyes blinked slowly. This is indeed concerning, Ambassador. However, the Council must understand context. The Vexil representative has informed us that New Haven Colony is located in disputed space, not clearly marked as human territory. The Vexil representative stood, his multiple legs clicking on the floor. The acquisition was entirely legal under galactic salvage and commerce laws, he said through his translator. The specimens were found on an unregistered world. They are classified as biological assets available for trade. Somin turned to look at the Vexil representative. Her face remained calm, but something in her eyes made several nearby representatives shift uncomfortably. Biological assets, she repeated quietly. You call our children biological assets. It is the correct legal terminology, the Vexil replied. Your species has not properly registered your colonies. You cannot expect protections you have not filed for. Other representatives nodded. This was technically true. Bureaucracy was important in galactic law. The humans were new and sometimes forgot proper procedures. Ambassador Somin, Vrath said gently, the Council understands your distress. Perhaps we can arrange mediation. The Vexil government could return the young humans, and your government could pay a reasonable finder's fee to compensate for the inconvenience, and proper registration of your colonies going forward, another representative added helpfully. Somin stood very still. She looked around the chamber at all the different species watching her. Most looked sympathetic but unconcerned. This was a minor dispute, easily resolved through standard channels. You don't understand, Somin said softly. I assure you, Ambassador, we understand completely, Vrath said. We have resolved thousands of custody disputes. Young beings are moved between worlds regularly for education, labor placement, and cultural exchange. This happens all the time. No, Somin said, and her voice was no longer soft. You don't understand what you've done. The chamber grew quiet. How many of you have children? Somin asked suddenly. A few representatives raised appendages or signaled affirmatively. How many of you spent years raising them? How many of you feel fear when they are in danger? More silence. Many species in the galaxy laid eggs and left them. Others produced young in large numbers, expecting most to die. Some species never even met their offspring. The concept of intense parental bonding was not universal. Humans are different, Sumin said. We carry our children inside our bodies for 9 months. We bond with them before they are even born. When they are born, they are helpless. Completely helpless. They cannot walk, cannot feed themselves, cannot survive alone. It takes years before they can be independent. She pressed another button. Images of human families appeared. Parents holding babies, children learning to walk. Families eating together, playing together, living together. We invest everything in our children, Somin continued. We protect them above all else. We teach them, guide them, love them with an intensity most of you cannot comprehend. When a human child is hurt, every human feels it. When a human child is taken. She paused, and for the first time, her controlled expression cracked slightly. When a human child is taken, you have declared war on every human who has ever been a parent. Every human who has ever been a child. Every human who has ever loved someone. The Vexil representative clicked dismissively. This is emotional rhetoric. The law is clear. Somin turned back to Vrath. I am formally withdrawing from mediation. I am withdrawing from this council session. Earth will handle this matter internally. Vrath leaned forward, concerned now. Ambassador, please reconsider. The council can help resolve this peacefully. Peacefully? Somin's voice rose for the first time. You want us to negotiate? To pay a fee? To fill out paperwork while our children are being sold as slaves? She began gathering her things. Ambassador Somin, if Earth takes unilateral action, there will be consequences, another representative warned. The Vexil territory is sovereign space. Military incursion would violate dozens of treaties. Somin stopped and looked back at the assembly. When she spoke, her voice was cold and absolute. 63 human children were taken. Let me be very clear about what happens next. Earth is not coming to negotiate. Earth is not coming to file complaints. Earth is coming to get our children back, and we will go through anything and anyone who stands in our way. You cannot threaten the council, the Vexil representative shouted. I am not threatening, Somin replied. I am explaining. You think you know humanity. You've read our files. You know we are peaceful, diplomatic, cooperative. All of that is true. But you have crossed a line you didn't know existed. You have done the one thing that turns every human into something you have never seen before. She walked toward the exit, then paused. My own daughter is 23 years old now, Soman said quietly. She lives on Mars, works as an engineer, and calls me every week. If someone took her today, I would burn down worlds to get her back. Those 63 children have parents just like me. They have grandparents, aunts, uncles, neighbors, teachers, friends. You have hurt every single one of them. This is madness, Vrath said. Your species will face sanctions, isolation, military response from Vexil forces. Soman smiled, but it was not a happy expression. You still don't understand. We don't care. Humans have fought wars that killed millions over far less. We have destroyed ourselves over ideas, over land, over pride. But our children? There is nothing we won't sacrifice for them, nothing we won't do to bring them home. She reached the exit and turned back one last time. I would advise all council species to stay out of our way. This is not your fight. Don't make it your fight. Then she was gone. The chamber erupted in noise. Representatives argued, shouted, demanded responses. Vrath tried to restore order but failed. The Vexil representative laughed, a clicking, chittering sound. One small species threatening the entire council. Ridiculous. Our fleet will crush any human response. But an older representative, one who had studied Earth history carefully, did not laugh. She had read about human wars. She had read about what humans did when they were truly angry. You should recall that ship immediately, she said to the Vexil representative. Return the children. Never, the Vexil replied. They will not dare attack us. The old representative shook her head sadly. Then your species has just made a terrible mistake. You have no idea what you've awakened. Across space, aboard the Vexil raiding ship, the children huddled in their cages. They were scared, exhausted, and far from home. But Mina kept them together, kept them strong. Someone will come, Deho whispered again like a prayer. And somewhere in the darkness of space, Earth was already responding. Ships were launching. Soldiers were arming. Parents were volunteering. An entire species was mobilizing for war, not for territory, not for resources, not for pride, for 63 children who just wanted to go home. Captain Hyok stood on the bridge of the dreadnought called Unbroken Promise and watched Earth disappear behind them. His ship was the largest warship humanity had ever built, over 2 kilometers long, bristling with weapons that had never been fired in anger. Until now, behind his ship came hundreds of others. Military vessels, transport ships, even civilian craft that had volunteered and been quickly fitted with weapons. The largest fleet in human history, assembled in less than 72 hours. Captain, his communications officer said, we're receiving more join requests. Civilian ships from Mars, from Europa, from the outer colonies. Everyone wants to help. Hyok shook his head. Tell them we have enough. Tell them to stay home and take care of their families. But he understood why they wanted to come. Every human with access to news knew what had happened. They had seen the pictures of the children. They had heard the parents crying. They had felt something ancient and primal awaken inside them. Admiral Taeyon on Secure Channel, another officer reported. Hyok pressed a button. The image of Admiral Taeyon appeared on his screen. She was a woman in her 60s with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much war. She commanded the entire operation from her flagship. Status report, Captain, she said. All systems ready, Admiral. We've completed our jump calculations. We can enter Vexil space in 6 hours. Good. Remember the mission objective. Get the children back alive, Hyok recited. Everything else is secondary. Correct. We're not trying to conquer the Vexil. We're not trying to destroy them. We just want our children. And if they resist? Taeyon's expression hardened. Then we remove the resistance. Proportionally but decisively. Make them understand that they cannot win this. The channel closed. Hyuk turned to his crew. They were all quiet, focused. Every person on the ship had volunteered. Every person had their own reason for being here. Lieutenant Bora approached from the intelligence station. She was young, barely 25, but brilliant. She had been the one to track the Vexil ship through a network of sensor data and informant reports. Captain, I have an update on the raiding ship's position, she said. They've changed course 3 times trying to hide their trail. But we have their trajectory. They're heading toward the Void Markets, a neutral trading station in unclaimed space. How long until they arrive there? 5 days at their current speed. If they sell the children there, tracking them becomes nearly impossible. They could be scattered across dozens of worlds. Hyuk felt anger rise in his chest but pushed it down. Anger was useless. Cold determination was what they needed. "We'll intercept before they reach the market," he said. "Send the coordinates to Admiral Taeon." Across the fleet, similar conversations were happening. Soldiers checked their equipment. Pilots ran simulations. Medics prepared for casualties. And in the civilian ships, ordinary people who had never held a weapon trained as best they could. A father who worked as an accountant learned how to operate a boarding pod. A mother who was a teacher practiced emergency first aid. A grandfather who had retired from the military 15 years ago put his uniform back on. They were all someone's parent, someone's child, someone's family. And right now that was all that mattered. In Vexel space, their high command was in chaos. "How many ships?" the Supreme Commander demanded, his hard shell reflecting the emergency lights of the command center. "Our scouts report at least 300 human vessels," an aide replied nervously, "including several capital-class warships of unknown design." 300? For a retrieval mission? "Yes, Commander. And they're ignoring all communication attempts. They're not requesting permission to enter our space. They're not threatening or demanding. They're just coming." The Supreme Commander pulled up human files on his screen. He had dismissed them before as a minor species, technologically inferior, politically insignificant. Now he actually read the reports. Human history was written in blood. Wars over religion, wars over resources, wars over ideas. They had nearly destroyed themselves with nuclear weapons centuries ago. They were capable of terrible violence when motivated. What drives them? The Supreme Commander asked. The juveniles cannot be worth this kind of military response. "Our xenopsychology experts have been analyzing human culture," another aide said. "Commander, we may have made a serious error. Humans apparently form extremely strong bonds with their offspring. Taking their young is considered one of their most severe taboos. All species protect their young to some degree. Not like this, Commander. Humans invest years in raising each child. They form emotional connections that override even self-preservation instincts. There are historical cases of humans entering burning buildings, fighting impossible odds, sacrificing their own lives to save their children." The Supreme Commander felt something unfamiliar crawl up his spine. Fear. "Contact Captain Threx immediately," he ordered. "Tell him to release the human juveniles at once." "We've been trying, Commander. He's deep in the void sectors, maintaining communication silence to avoid tracking. It could take days to reach him." "Then send faster ships. Send everything. Those humans must be returned before the human fleet arrives," but it was too late. The human fleet had already crossed into Vexil space. The first Vexil patrol that encountered them sent a standard challenge. They received no response. When they moved to intercept, the human ships simply went around them. When the patrol commander fired a warning shot, the human response was immediate and overwhelming. 3 human frigates broke formation and engaged. The fight lasted exactly 90 seconds. The Vexil ships were disabled, their weapons destroyed, but their crew left alive. Then the human ships returned to formation and continued on their course. "They're not even slowing down," the patrol commander reported, his voice shaken. "They disabled us like we were children's toys." More Vexil ships responded. Military stations activated. Defense platforms powered up. The Supreme Commander ordered full mobilization. But every Vexil force that engaged the human fleet met the same fate. The humans fought with precision and overwhelming force. They disabled, they destroyed obstacles, but they never stopped moving. They had a destination, and nothing was going to prevent them from reaching it. On the bridge of Unbroken Promise, Hyok received reports of each engagement. "Vexil Battle Group 3 has surrendered," his tactical officer reported. "They're asking for mercy. Accept their surrender. Disable their weapons and move on." Another group is forming ahead, same procedure. "We're not here to fight them. We're here to get past them." Bora looked up from her station. "Captain, I'm receiving a transmission from the Vexil High Command. They want to negotiate. Tell them we'll negotiate after we have our children back. They're offering full reparations, formal apologies, trade agreements." Hyok's jaw tightened. "Tell them we don't want their money or their apologies. We want our children. Until we have them, we have nothing to discuss." The message was sent. The human fleet continued forward. Lieutenant Bora worked through the night tracking the raiding ship. She used every sensor, every piece of intelligence, every mathematical model she could devise. The Vexil ship was running, changing course, hiding in sensor shadows. But humans had been tracking prey since before they had space travel. They understood pursuit, patience, and prediction. I have them, Bora announced suddenly. They're hiding in the Koros asteroid field. The density interferes with most sensors, but our quantum tracking can penetrate it. Hayek immediately sent the coordinates to Admiral Tayan and to the Special Forces team led by June. How long until we arrive? He asked. 18 hours at maximum speed. Make it 12. The fleet accelerated. Behind them, Vexel Space was in shock. Their military had been pushed aside like it didn't exist. Their sovereignty had been ignored. Their protests had fallen on deaf ears, and the humans just kept coming. On the raiding ship, Threx finally received the emergency messages from High Command. He read them twice, not believing what he was seeing. They want me to release the merchandise, he said out loud. They want me to give up the most profitable haul of my career? His second officer looked nervous. Captain, the messages say a human fleet has entered our space. They've defeated every force sent against them. Impossible. Humans are weak. The reports are very clear, Captain. The High Command is terrified. Threx felt his confidence waver, but he had been a raider for 20 years. He knew how to hide, how to wait until danger passed. We stay hidden, he decided. The asteroid field will mask us. When the humans give up and leave, we'll proceed to the markets as planned. In the cargo hold, Mina kept the younger children together. They had been on the ship for 5 days now. They were hungry, scared, and exhausted, but Mina refused to let them give up hope. Tell us again, Yuna whispered. Tell us about rescue. My dad always said humans take care of each other, Deho repeated for the 100th time. No matter where we are, no matter how far, humans come for each other. Especially for children. Do you really believe that? Jiho asked quietly. Deho pressed his hand against the transparent wall of the cage and looked out at the stars. Yes, he said. I really believe that. And in the darkness of space, closing in with mathematical precision, a fleet of hundreds of ships proved him right. June checked his equipment one final time. The magnetic locks on his boots, the plasma cutter on his hip, the stun rifle across his back. Every piece of gear had been tested, retested, and tested again. There would be no mistakes. Around him, his team did the same. 20 soldiers, the best humanity had. They were all volunteers. They were all parents. 5 minutes to insertion point, the pilot announced over the comm system. The boarding craft was small and fast, designed to slip through sensor nets and attach to enemy ships. Through the narrow viewport, June could see the asteroid field ahead. Massive rocks tumbling through space, each one large enough to destroy a ship if they collided. Target vessel confirmed. Lieutenant Bora's voice came through his earpiece. She was still on the unbroken promise, guiding them in. The Vexel ship is hiding in grid section 7 Alpha. Sending exact coordinates now. June pulled up the tactical display. The Vexel ship appeared as a red dot, nestled between 3 large asteroids. Clever position. Most sensors couldn't penetrate the interference, but human quantum tracking technology was years ahead of anything else in the galaxy. We have visual confirmation, the pilot said. Through the viewport, June saw it. A dark ship, its engines powered down to minimum, trying to be invisible, but human eyes could see heat signatures that the ship couldn't completely hide. All teams, this is Admiral Tayan. A voice came over the command channel. You are authorized to proceed. Mission parameters remain unchanged. Retrieve the children alive and unharmed. All other objectives are secondary. Understood, Admiral, June replied. Beginning approach. The boarding craft moved slowly through the asteroid field, weaving between the tumbling rocks. The pilot was skilled, making micro-adjustments every few seconds. One wrong move would smash them against stone. On the Vexil ship, Threx was starting to believe he had escaped. 6 days of hiding and no sign of pursuit. The humans must have lost his trail. Maintain silence protocols, he told his crew. Another day and we can safely move to the markets. Then every alarm on the ship activated at once. Multiple contacts. His sensor officer screamed. They're right on top of us. Impossible, Threx shouted. We're hidden. But on the display screen he could see them. Not just one ship. Dozens of them emerging from behind asteroids, appearing from every direction. They had been surrounded and never knew it. How did they find us? Threx demanded. He had no way of knowing that humans had tracked them across half the galaxy. That every course change, every hiding spot, every attempt to disappear had been predicted and countered by Lieutenant Bora's mathematical models. Incoming transmission, the communications officer said. Ignore it. Prepare to jump. Jump engines need 30 minutes to charge, Captain. Threx felt panic rising. 30 minutes. He didn't have 30 minutes. On his screen he saw a small craft approaching. It moved with purpose, heading straight for his hull. Fire on that craft, he ordered. Captain, if we fire, we reveal our exact position to all of them. Fire! The Vexil ship's weapons activated. Plasma bolts shot toward the boarding craft. But the small human ship was faster, more agile. It dodged between asteroids, using the rocks as cover. The plasma bolts missed and hit an asteroid instead, making it explode in a shower of debris. They're still coming, the sensor officer reported. June felt the boarding craft shake as they evaded fire. The pilot grunted with effort, pushing the ship through maneuvers that would have killed a less skilled operator. 30 seconds to contact, the pilot announced. Prepare for breach, June told his team. They lined up at the airlock. Weapons ready. The ship shook again as a plasma bolt passed close by. 10 seconds. The craft suddenly flipped, rotating to present its magnetic clamps to the Vexil hull. Contact. A metallic clang echoed through the craft as they locked on. Immediately, the plasma cutter activated. A circular hole began forming in the Vexil ship's hull. The metal glowed red, then white, then simply wasn't there anymore. Breach successful, June reported. Going in. They dropped through the hole into the Vexil ship. Emergency alarms wailed. The Vexil crew scrambled, trying to organize a defense. But they were raiders used to attacking defenseless colonies. They had never fought trained soldiers before. June's team moved like water, flowing through the corridors with practiced efficiency. Stun rounds fired from their rifles, dropping Vexil crew members before they could react. The humans wore armor that absorbed the few plasma shots that got through. Cargo bay located, June said, checking his tactical display. 2 levels down, forward section. They moved as a unit, covering each other, clearing each corridor with precision. A group of Vexil tried to form a defensive line. The humans used flashbangs to disorient them, then moved through with stun batons, taking them down without killing them. Remember, June reminded his team, we're here for the children. Nothing else matters. In the cargo hold, Mina heard the alarms and the sounds of fighting. She pulled the younger children close. What's happening? Yuna asked, her voice frightened. I don't know, Mina admitted, but then she heard something that made her heart leap. Voices. Human voices speaking in Korean and English. Someone's here, Daeho whispered, his eyes wide. Someone came for us. The cargo bay door exploded inward. Vexil guards tried to fight back but were quickly overwhelmed. Then soldiers in human armor entered, their weapons sweeping the room, securing it. June saw the cages. Dozens of them. 63 children all huddled together, scared and exhausted but alive. Relief washed over him so powerfully he almost couldn't breathe. He removed his helmet, letting the children see his face. My name is June, he said gently, kneeling down near the nearest cage. We're here to take you home. For a moment there was silence. Then Yuna started crying, but this time not from fear, from relief, from joy. You came, Daeho said, tears streaming down his face. I knew you would come. Always, June replied. We will always come. His team began opening the cages. The locks were electronic and their hacking devices made quick work of them. As each cage opened, soldiers moved in, checking the children for injuries, offering water and food, wrapping them in thermal blankets. All children accounted for, one of his team members reported. 63 all alive, no serious injuries. June activated his comm. Admiral Taeyeon, this is June. Mission successful. We have all the children. I repeat, all children recovered and safe. On the bridge of the Unbroken Promise, Captain Hyuk heard the report and felt tension he didn't know he'd been carrying release from his shoulders. Around the bridge, crew members smiled, some with tears in their eyes. Excellent work. Admiral Taeyeon's voice came over the channel. Bring them home. But the mission wasn't over yet. The children still needed to be evacuated safely. Threx, realizing his ship had been boarded and his cargo taken, made a desperate decision. If he couldn't have the merchandise, no one would. Activate the self-destruct, he told his remaining crew. Captain, there are still crew members throughout the ship. I don't care. Activate it now. On the human tactical display, alarms flashed. The Vexil ship is preparing to self-destruct, Bora reported from the Unbroken Promise. 5 minutes to detonation. June, you need to get out now, Captain Hyuk ordered. Understood, June replied. All teams fall back to the boarding craft. Bring the children. The evacuation was chaotic but controlled. Soldiers carried the younger children. Mina helped guide the older ones. They moved as fast as they could through the corridors, back to where the boarding craft waited. 3 minutes, Bora's voice counted down in their ears. They reached the breach point. One by one, soldiers climbed through with children in their arms. Yuna clung to a soldier's neck. Jiho was wrapped in a blanket. Taeho climbed by himself, determined to be brave. 2 minutes, Mina was the last child through. June did a final check, making sure no one was left behind. Then his team followed. The boarding craft detached just as the timer hit 30 seconds. The pilot pushed the engines to maximum, racing away from the Vexel ship. Behind them, the ship exploded. A brief sun in the darkness of space, then nothing but debris. The boarding craft docked with the unbroken promise. As the airlock opened, Captain Hyuk was there waiting. Medical teams rushed forward to check the children. Parents who had traveled with the fleet pushed forward, searching for their sons and daughters. Daeho stepped off the craft and saw his mother. She ran to him, falling to her knees, pulling him into her arms and sobbing. His father was right behind her, wrapping both of them in his embrace. All around the docking bay, families reunited. Yuna found her parents. Jiho's grandfather held him close. Mina's mother kissed her forehead over and over, unable to believe she was real. June watched from the side, allowing them their moment. His team stood with him, equally quiet. They were soldiers trained for violence, but this was why they fought. Admiral Taeon's voice came over the ship's intercom. All ships, this is Admiral Taeon. Mission accomplished. The children are safe. We're going home. Throughout the fleet, cheers erupted. On Earth, when the news was broadcast, entire cities celebrated. Strangers hugged in the streets. Flags were raised. Church bells rang. The Vexel Supreme Commander received the report and knew his species had suffered a defeat, unlike any in their history. Not in territory lost or ships destroyed, but in understanding their place in the galaxy. The human fleet arrived back at New Haven Colony 3 days after the rescue. The entire settlement came out to greet them. Parents waited anxiously in the landing area, barely able to contain themselves as the transport ships descended. The ramp of the first ship lowered. Daeho stepped out into the sunlight of his home world, holding his mother's hand. Behind him came Yuna, Jiho, Mina, and all the others. 63 children, tired but safe, walking back into the arms of their families. The reunion was loud and emotional. Parents cried. Children cried. Even the soldiers who had brought them home found themselves wiping their eyes. Captain Hyuk watched from the ship, feeling a deep satisfaction he had never experienced in 20 years of military service. We did it, Lieutenant Bora said beside him. We actually did it. Did you ever doubt? Hyuk asked. No, she replied. Not for a second. They were our children. We always come for our children. Over the next week, the children began to recover. They attended counseling sessions with psychologists who specialized in trauma. They spent time with their families. Slowly, carefully, they started to heal. Daeho had nightmares for the first few nights. He would wake up thinking he was still in the cage, still far from home. But then his father would be there holding him, reminding him he was safe. And gradually, the nightmares became less frequent. Yuna didn't want to let her mother out of her sight. She followed her everywhere, always holding her hand. Her mother took time off work, spending every hour with her daughter, letting her know she was loved and protected. Mina struggled with guilt. She had been the oldest and felt responsible for the younger children. A counselor helped her understand that she had done everything right, that she had kept them together and kept them strong. It would take time, but she began to believe it. The colony held a ceremony 2 weeks after the return. They gathered in the town square where a new monument had been erected. It showed a simple image, a parent's hand holding a child's hand, carved from the native stone of New Haven. The governor spoke to the assembled crowd. We will never forget what happened here, he said. We will never forget the fear we felt when our children were taken. But we will also never forget that when humanity's children are in danger, all of humanity responds. Distance doesn't matter. Resources don't matter. Nothing matters more than bringing our children home. Above the colony, a human frigate took up permanent orbit. Admiral Taeon had ordered it herself. New Haven would never be undefended again. Far away in the Galactic Council chambers, Ambassador Soman returned for the first time since she had walked out. The chamber fell silent as she entered. Everyone remembered her words, her warning, her promise, and everyone had seen what happened next. Counselor Vrath approached her carefully. Ambassador Salmon, the Council wishes to express its relief that the young humans were recovered safely. Thank you, Counselor, Salmon replied politely. We also wish to discuss the human military action in Vexil space. There are concerns about the precedent this sets. Salmon looked at him calmly. What precedent would that be, Counselor? That a species can ignore sovereignty, ignore treaties, and use military force whenever they feel wronged. We didn't feel wronged, Counselor. Our children were kidnapped and sold as slaves. There is a difference between feeling wronged and having an actual objective crime committed against you. Another representative spoke up, but your response was disproportionate. You mobilized hundreds of ships for 63 juveniles. Salmon's expression hardened slightly. Tell me, Representative, how many ships would have been proportionate? How many children equal one ship? 10 children? 20? Please explain the mathematics of child worth to me. The representative shifted uncomfortably and said nothing. We made our position clear, Salmon continued. Our children are not negotiable. They are not subject to cost-benefit analysis. They are not bargaining chips. When they are taken, we respond with everything we have. This is not a threat. It is simply a fact about humanity that the galaxy needs to understand. The Vexil government has formally surrendered, Vrath said. They have agreed to your terms. Our terms are simple, Salmon replied. Captain Threx and his crew are being tried under human law for kidnapping and child trafficking. The Vexil government will cooperate fully with any future investigations. They will also pay reparations to New Haven Colony for the trauma caused. They have agreed to all of this, Vrath confirmed. Good. Salmon pressed a button on her datapad. A document appeared on the chamber's main display. Humanity is proposing a new galactic convention, she said. The protection of sapient young. It would establish universal laws protecting the children of all species from trafficking, enslavement, and exploitation. The chamber erupted in surprised murmurs. You want to help other species? A representative asked, confused. After what happened? Yes, Salmon said firmly. Because our children came home. We were lucky. We had the military strength to get them back. But what about species who don't? What about smaller civilizations whose children are taken and never returned? She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from dozens of worlds. What happened to our children was terrible, she continued, but it made us realize something. This happens to other species too. Maybe not as often. Maybe you don't all care about your young the way we do, but some of you do, and those children deserve protection. Counselor Vrath studied the document carefully. This convention would establish strict penalties for child trafficking. It would require all member species to cooperate in recovery efforts. It would classify the taking of sapient young as a war crime. Yes, Salmon confirmed. It would ensure that what happened to us doesn't happen to anyone else. Why? Another representative asked. Why do you care about our children? Salmon was quiet for a moment, thinking. Because when I saw my people's children in those cages, scared and far from home, I felt something break inside me. Every parent who heard about it felt the same way. We cannot undo what happened. We cannot erase that pain. But we can make sure it never happens again to any child of any species. She paused. Humans have done terrible things in our history. We've fought each other, hurt each other, nearly destroyed ourselves. But we've also learned that the best parts of humanity emerge when we protect those who cannot protect themselves. If we can extend that protection to the entire galaxy, then something good will come from this tragedy. The chamber was silent. Then, slowly, representatives began to signal their support. One by one, species that had children, species that cared for their young voiced their approval. The vote was called. The convention passed unanimously. As Salmon left the chamber, Counselor Vrath approached her one more time. Ambassador, he said quietly, I owe you an apology. I did not understand the depth of human feeling regarding children. I treated it as a minor dispute. You couldn't have known, Salmon replied. Most species don't raise their young the way we do. You had no frame of reference, but I should have listened when you tried to explain. Salmon nodded. Yes, you should have. Maybe this will help others listen in the future. Back on New Haven, life slowly returned to normal. The children went back to school, though now with security protocols and emergency procedures. They played outside again, though parents watched more carefully. Deho, Yuna, Mina, and Jiho remained close friends, bound by their shared experience. They met regularly, supporting each other as they processed what had happened. One evening, as the sun set over New Haven, the four of them sat together on the same rock where they had been playing when the Vexel ship appeared. "Do you think about it?" Una asked quietly. "About what happened?" "Every day," Mina admitted. "But it's getting easier." "I was so scared," Jiho said. "We all were," Deho replied. "But we stayed together. We stayed strong. And they came for us," Una added, "just like you said they would." Deho looked up at the sky where stars were beginning to appear. Somewhere up there, human ships patrolled. Somewhere up there, the galaxy was learning a new lesson about humanity. "They'll always come," he said. "That's what humans do. We take care of each other." A frigate passed overhead, its running lights bright against the darkening sky. The children waved at it. On the ship's bridge, a crew member saw them and waved back. Mina stood up, helping Jiho to his feet. "Come on," she said. "Our parents will be worried if we stay out too late." They walked back toward the settlement together, their shadows long in the fading light. Behind them, the monument in the town square stood silent, a reminder of what had been lost and what had been recovered. In space stations across the galaxy, a new phrase began to spread. Species that had never met humans heard it. Traders repeated it. Military commanders noted it. Slavers and raiders learned it, sometimes too late. Never touch a human's child. It was said with respect, with fear, with understanding. It became part of galactic common knowledge, as fundamental as knowing not to breathe in vacuum or to avoid black holes. The Vexel species, once proud raiders, became the cautionary tale. They were the species that had learned the hard way what humanity truly was. They had seen humanity as weak, as primitive, as unimportant. They had taken human children, and they had discovered that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their weapons. It was their absolute, unstoppable galaxy,